boys and girls, and welcome to our last literacy lesson for the week. That means it's time to do our little bit of writing for our fractured fairy tales. Now you guys have been working so hard to put each piece together for your very own fairy tale. And today is the day that we're finally going to be writing our story and putting it all together. So now the first thing I want to say, the most important part, is that you've been working so hard to make sure that you make each piece and that they're fitting together. Now that it's time to write our story, you want to make sure that you use each of those pieces and not just make a new story out of nowhere. So make sure your story includes the setting you chose, your characters that you picked, your problem and solution that you came up with, and of course in the last week we made our plot, which helped lay out the beginning, the middle, and the end. So make sure you're putting all those pieces together to be making your own fairy tale. Now today, I think our most important part is how do I turn my plot or my beginning, middle, end into a full story? Because I know some people made some really detailed plot points here, and it might feel like your story is already done. The important part to remember is when we did this work here, those were just ideas to help lay our story in order. So I'm going to show you what my beginning, middle, end was, and then show you the story that I created and showing that we need extra little pieces in there. So the beginning of my story, I said, was Annie the astronaut blasts off into space in her rocket. Now that tells me a beginning important point, but it doesn't tell me why she's going to space, where she's going. No details. So in my story, I hope to answer some of those questions. Next says in the middle that Molly the monster comes onto the rocket and tries to drive. Well, that's a very important point in my plot, but again, it doesn't answer questions. Where did Molly come from? Why does she want to drive the rocket ship? Those details have to be in my story. And the very last part is the ending, is Annie and Molly blast off to Pluto together. Now, that's a great ending, and I'm glad it all was wrapped up with a solution, but these plot points don't tell me how that happened. How did they end up being friends and going together? So I think some of your plots are going to be very similar to that, and it's your job to fill in the extra details to make it into a full fairy tale now. So I'm going to show you these plots are here, and now it's time for me to read you my own fairy tale here. All right, so buckle in, we have a story to read. Once upon a time, there was a girl named Annie. Her dream was to go to space. When she grew up, she became an astronaut and blasted off to space. Her mission was to go to Pluto. As she was traveling, she heard a loud bang. A monster was coming onto her rocket. The monster took the steering wheel and tried to drive. Annie yelled, "Stop!" But the monster didn't listen. Annie used her space language translator and tried again. This time the monster listened. She said her name was Molly and she was trying to go to her home on Pluto. Annie told Molly that that's where she was going to. They decided that they could travel together. Working together, they made it safe and sound to Pluto. The end. So boys and girls, when we started with our plot points, I pointed out a lot of questions that needed extra details, like why did Annie go to space? Why did Molly try to drive? And how did they end up being friends in the end? So in my story, I added a lot more sentences and details to make it an enjoyable story. It had a whole beginning, middle, end. It included my setting, which was space. My two characters were there, and of course the problem and solution were all put inside. So now to do that with yours, you can make it as long as you would like. Of course that takes a lot of work. So going back to our plot points here, those were 3 sentences to be the beginning, middle, end. Of course, we need more details than that, of course, to introduce these things. So when you do your fairy tale writing today, make sure each piece is put in, and it can be as long as you would like it to be. But we don't want it too short, or it's not much of a story. Our questions won't get answered. So it can be as long as you would like, but I would like your story to be at least 6 sentences. So no less than 6 sentences for your story. All right? Now to do this work, I want you to write it out by hand with a pencil and a paper, just like all of our other steps. It can be on just a simple lined piece of paper or whatever you have. There are no templates for you today for this, because it's just writing on whatever paper you have. All right? Now the important part is that you keep it, because we have one more step to go on our fractured fairy tale next week. So you need your story to do that. And I'm really going to be really proud of your work. When you're all done your writing, you can take a picture of it and put it up into our Dropbox. Of course, this might be a big task for some friends in our class. If anyone needs a little bit of support by their parents, you can do a little bit of scribing. That means your child can tell you their ideas and you can write it out for them, or you can write a sample on the side that they can then copy in their own printing. So any way to make sure all those ideas and fairy tales are put onto paper. All right, boys and girls, I cannot wait to read these fairy tales. Good luck and have fun.